what our purpose is, our composition, some selection and training and equipment information. And then I picked 10 cases out of the 900 incidents that I've been involved in the last almost 26 years, and some of them, how they impacted us in this area. And I think you might find them interesting. I have no problem with questions if they come forward. I just have to have a bit of a disclaimer that I can't discuss some issues or cases that are current or may come up in criminal or civil litigation trials. So I'll just let you know if your question might be infringing upon that area. But just to start off about a concept of a tactical team, most people think of a tactical team as the people who are busting down doors and SWAT teams that are trying to, breach into rooms or using explosive items and so forth. But in truth, a tactical team has 5 basic elements. And the first element that I'll talk about is what we consider like a search entry team. That's the people that you often see serving search warrants and things of that sort. Another element of a tactical team is our crisis negotiation team. And a third element would be our tactical EMS. We have a doctor and several paramedics that are part of our team. We have a bomb squad that is titled the Penn State Bomb Squad, but it is an area bomb squad. It's very dedicated and very well-educated and trained members that are probably our busiest element of the 5 in this area. And then lastly is a mobile command staff, that we have a mobile RV that we roll out for certain incidents. But so that's just the concept itself is that we try to come up with a system that we can resolve crisis, whether it be a critical incident or what is often termed a special event. So the reason why we created a tactical team or a tactical response concept in this area is we had a barricaded gunman incident in 1993. And as it so happens, it was the first game that Penn State was having as a member of the Big Ten. So it was October of 1993. At that time, Interstate 99 wasn't in existence. So the 2 main arteries that fans were coming to the stadium by were from 322, the roadway that connects Altoona with Harrisburg, and then Route 26, which we often would refer to as College Avenue, which would connect Interstate 80 with State College. The barricaded gunman was firing off an AR-15 type of rifle, and he was doing it right near the intersection of College Avenue and Route 322. So therefore, we had to shut down the intersection of those 2 main arteries. It was kind of a smear in the face of Penn State going into the Big Ten, their very first game ever, and now all of a sudden they have all these traffic woes. To make a long story short, several of us who had military experience, we taped flashlights to our rifles, our own personal rifles, because we didn't have patrol rifles back then. And we searched all the areas in there, and we were able to find him. Eventually, he had unfortunately killed himself. But, it just brought everything to a screeching halt. So that was the reason why we were formed. Initially, there were only 3 departments on our team. The makeup of our team is a regionalized team of 6 police departments in the county. And we also received some assistance based on the circumstances from the Sheriff's Department and the Pennsylvania State Police. But we started out with 3 departments. It was our department, Ferguson Township, and Patton Township, which make up the 3 predominant departments who surround Penn State University. And that's the way we ran things for a couple of years until 1996. In September of 1996, there was an active shooter incident on the Hub lawn. In that event, a young lady had taken a rifle to the south area of the Hub and set up a position, and she ended up shooting 4 people. One young lady fatally, she wounded another one, and the last 2 people fortunately had their backpacks on filled with books, and the bullet was stopped by the number of books that they had in their backpacks, so they were spared. So that ended up being the reason that Penn State University's police department came on board as a team, and soon after then the Bellefonte and Spring Township police departments came on. So that created a formation of 6 departments, And we are ruled or governed by the Board of Chiefs of those 6 jurisdictions. And it makes it very interesting, but at times, and can be very confusing. But what I like about it is, the relationship building and, the process of having all that much input and then coming forward with a really good product. We have 5 main purposes as a tactical team. The first is to save lives and to promote safety. The best way to explain that is that most police officers are out working on the road, or even detectives can only have so much equipment with them, and their best weapon is like any of us, is our mind and our ability to speak and impart knowledge and so forth. But sometimes we run into critical type incidents where safety becomes paramount, the safety of the public and the police officers, and we need extra equipment and different type of tactics to be able to resolve something. So that's our first and foremost purpose as far as a response concept. The second is to reduce risk. It's a risk mitigation type tool to resolve conflict through negotiations or coming up with a safe solution for things. Another one is to provide options while maintaining a lawful objective. Some of the things I see on TV, they're obviously, fiction, but it's really important that we provide as many options as possible to resolve a matter, and that we stay within our legal definition. In other words, our remaining within a lawful objective. And I have brought critical incidents to a screeching halt before if we didn't have the appropriate paperwork, warrant paperwork, whatever we needed, just to be able to make sure that we're operating within our lawful objective and constitutionally as far as Pennsylvania law and federal case law comes into. And then the last is the tactical concept, the tactical team concept. We use it to train other police officers on our tactics, techniques, and procedures to help with our, with the public and with ourselves. So those are our 5 main purposes. We also have some basic missions that we're designated to accomplish. The first is hostage situations. They don't happen that often for us. The first one we had in 1996 that we were able to resolve through negotiations. And the last one we had was in 2019, where unfortunately the person killed several people, but we were able to save a lady in her home and get her services. Second is a high-risk warrant service, and that's probably the most prominent type of an event that we are involved in. If it gets to the point where there's a significant amount of drugs and guns and weapons and so forth, we'll use our tactical team and members to resolve the high-risk warrants. Sometimes there are sniper type situations. I kind of sometimes refer to them as high-risk searches, but we will also help out with sniper situations. High-risk apprehensions. We've had several incidents where we've had to pursue people into wooded terrain or gone to other counties to help other county teams as well as state police and apprehending people or resolving issues. And then the last one is our second, again, another very prominent mission that we have, and that's special assignments and special events. And that includes like Penn State games. Our tactical team deploys for the Penn State games to provide an overwatch, which is like an umbrella over the stadium of observers, sniper observers, and they're integrated on the ground with tactical team members so that each position of observation is integrated with somebody on the ground for safety. And then we have several tiers and rings that go outward from the stadium that we try to cover for safety. Another example of a special assignment or a special event is when a dignitary comes to the area. They typically will go to Penn State on campus, but they'll come into the university airport. So we'll help with airport security as well as wherever their destination is. You just never know what you're going to run into. 2008, when Barack Obama was running for president, and at that time was not really well known. As a candidate, he came to Penn State, and that day before, our current president at the time, George Bush, took all the Secret Service sniper observer teams with him, except for one, so they had to reach out to us to help out to cover this presidential candidate, a sitting senator at the time, to be able to be safe. So it was a neat incident to be involved in, but it also was very challenging too. So those are our basic missions that we have that we're involved in. So real quick, I wanted to go over what the composition of the team is. There are 5 main elements to the team. The first being the tactical team itself, which we commonly would think of if we see something taking place on TV. Their primary focus is to search and enter an area, or just to apprehend or control a space that might be in contention. Included in that team is our sniper observers. The primary mission of them is observation. Occasionally, it doesn't happen that often. There may have to be some type of a shot taken for an interdiction to save a life, but it's very infrequent. Searching and breaching responsibilities, less lethal devices, and that's one of the really important things that we were able to provide to a patrol officer at a special event or critical incident, is the ability to resolve something with a less lethal option. And then lastly is armored vehicle officers. We have what's termed a Lenco Bearcat. It's a very large, I think if you've ever been to a Penn State game near Gate C, you've seen the armored vehicle there. You have to have specialized training for that. I wrote a grant for that in 2008. We got it 2 years later, and we use it quite a bit. Fortunately, each time we've used it, it's been very helpful, and it hasn't been to the point where it's been shot at or anything of that sort. Second element is our crisis negotiation team, and they're made up of primary and secondary negotiators, as well as support officers and intelligence gathering officers. The interesting thing about crisis negotiations is that up until about the mid-90s, over 9 out of every 10 critical incidents were resolved through negotiations. And that's really important, because if you're able to resolve something safely, it means you're being very effective. But things have changed a little bit since the late 80s, early to mid 90s, and it's changed to where it's closer to 7 out of every 10, 7 or 8 out of every 10, and that's been attributed to domestic violence type events, as well as mental health type issues, serious mental health events that are taking place. And to give you an example of what changed in that time period is Pennsylvania, as well as the rest of our country, took a very different stance on domestic violence cases. When I was growing up in Cambria County, it was not unusual for a police officer or even a trooper to turn their back on a domestic violence case where, like, that's a family matter and they're going to need to sort that out on their own. Well, the laws changed drastically, and I'm glad that they have. And but one of the things that byproducts of the changes and enhanced laws is that it's taken the control away from the batterer. Being a batterer in a domestic violence type situation, it's often about the power and control. And when our court system and police and our legal system starts to take over that control and give that control back to the abused person, tends to compromise the decision making of the batterer, and sometimes they take drastic measures. So that's one of the reasons why things have changed. So negotiations are very important. Next up, as far as an element, is our bomb squad. These guys they're well equipped. They have a response vehicle with all kinds of neat gadgets in it. They have a $110,000 bomb robot that can do anything. We've actually used it because it has a camera on it and a microphone. We've actually negotiated with people through the bomb robot before. I mean, it's really neat to watch a robot walk up and extend its arm and hand a guy a cigarette and say, how about smoking a cigarette, taking a drink from your drink, and surrendering? And they actually do, and they talk to the robot. It's fun to watch it happen. It's a very neat tool. Next up, as far as an element, is our tactical EMS, tactical medics. They're made up of an ER doctor and several paramedics. And they are on top of the tactical combat casualty care concept. something that was adopted from Afghanistan and Iraq as far as medics and corpsmen, and it's very effective, especially when you have people who are wounded and getting them that help in that miracle minute and that golden hour. We've seen it in 2019 how it really helped out in saving a young lady's life that was shot in the chest. Last thing is our mobile command vehicle, which is staffed by predominantly by dispatchers that goes through special training on tactical dispatching, but they're equipped with all kinds of IT abilities and mobile data and communications, so they can run the dispatch center out of an RV type vehicle, and we use that for some critical incidents, especially the bigger events. So each element of the 5 has a selection process. I'll just go over real quick with the tactical team and the tactical medics there, and the bomb squad. You have a fitness test you have to complete. There are interview process that you have to go through. You have to have acceptable evaluations. You have to be able to demonstrate firearm skills, and you have a year probationary period where you have to be able to pass like a basic SWAT and a basic sniper course. And if I've had candidates before who got to their 11th and a half month and they just weren't cutting it, and we got rid of them. I mean, they went back to their regular patrol duties, but we needed somebody who was better than them in that regard. The tactical medics, same thing. They have their own standards as they have to follow. The bomb techs, I think that their testing as far as physical testing is very grueling, because they wear the level 9 suit that if anybody's ever seen the movie Hurt Locker, that the very bulky, thick Kevlar type of suit with a thick shield and halo headwear. And that's what they have to be able to demonstrate to be able to run in and operate in and do fine motor skills. So it's a pretty tough test for them. So there is a selection and training process and a probationary period that everybody has to follow in order to stay to continue in their role. I've been doing it for 26, a little over almost 26 years. The average lifespan of a tactical team officer, as far as staying as an active member of a team in the United States, is 7 years. So I'm actually very grateful to be healthy enough to be able to participate. Plus, I really like the way it helps me stay engaged with all the different police departments and the citizens and my own teammates. And I would like to get to 1,000 incidents and, maybe finish out my career in about 14 months, still being active in the team. But in the last 19 months, I've had 2 shoulders replaced and my left knee replaced. Those are from injuries in the military. And I'm kind of getting to the point where I don't think I should be running as much as I have been in the past. I was going to briefly talk about equipment, but I think it's really, it would suffice to say that everybody is issued weaponry, and that includes less lethal weapons, foam type of rounds that are intended to inspire people to stop doing what they're doing without causing them significant harm or death. We're all issued like body armor that's more than what I have on right now, that's intended to stop a rifle bullet. We have shields that were issued, breaching equipment, all kinds of different things to be able to use. The bomb techs, I think, have some really neat equipment along with their bomb robots and response vehicles. They also have x-ray machines and so forth. And they're used quite a lot at the Beaver Stadium on a football weekend. Those guys work harder than anybody else, I think, up there, just because there are so many packages and the risk of harm from missing one little clue could be so immense when it comes to impacting our fan base and so forth. So a lot of equipment that's involved, a lot of training that's involved, and then there are standards that we have to meet both individually and as a team throughout our training year itself. So like I said before, we're coming up on 900 events in the last, since 1994. I just wanted to hit on a couple of them and then talk about some of the impact that some of those events have had in this area regionally as well as in North America, because we've had the opportunity to be around long enough now that we share our tools and our some of our experiences, just like others have helped us out in 1994, when we were forming, I reached out to the Pennsylvania State Police to help us out. And grateful to have the assistance at that time of Captain Kevin Dugan and Corporal um, Greg Hall. And interestingly enough, about 14 years later, I ended up joining them as an instructor with the National Tactical Officers Association. So I got to learn under them and, you know, be inspired by their tutelage. And now we get to help other people out. So it's full circle. It's really rewarding and fulfilling. The first one I wanted to talk about real quick was that barricaded incident that happened out at the intersection that was predominant at the time for fans to get to Beaver Stadium. I think I covered that well enough. I think you can you gather pretty well how much that would impact a Penn State football crowd. You know, if you have, back then there weren't as many fans, but now with 108,000 plus that can be in the stadium for one of the bigger games, you want to focus a lot on facilitating, you know, egress and regress, as well as safety of the fans, and that was completely compromised by this event that took place out there. We were virtually inept when it came to trying to resolve that event, but I'm pretty confident now that if we ran into very similar circumstances, we would not only, just because of the geography and new roads, but we'd be able to contain that event, at least so that it wasn't impacting, you know, anybody who was any innocent people who were in the area at that time. Second event I talked about was in 1996, the Hub Lawn shooting. Active shooter events really didn't get a lot of attention until Columbine in 1998. But, you know, previous to that was the Hub Lawn shooting. And in that event, we had a young lady who had some military training and a World War II rifle, and she walked right through town, set up a position, a military type position, even with a, you know, a ground barrier, you know, so that she could stay there for a long time. And she started shooting people. And like I had mentioned, she shot 4 people, unfortunately wounding one and killing another. But she experienced a malfunction with her rifle. It was an old rifle. And during that time that there was a malfunction, a college student walked up and pulled the rifle from her, which I'm very glad that he did that. And in retaliation, she took a very large knife and tried to stab him with it, and missed and stabbed herself in the leg. And that pretty much brought that event to an end, thank God. But what that did was that really brought home the whole, in this area, at least at that time, that we can't rely on tactical teams to respond to resolve an event like that. We have to have our patrol officers ready to intervene in that type of event at any time. As it so happens, I was near the Grace Lutheran Church when the shooting started. I think it's commonly referred to as the Dorito Church on Beaver Avenue. But I was there in a relatively short period of time, and that event was over. But we were not prepared for it. But 2 years later, with Columbine bringing a lot more, shedding a lot more light onto police response to those type of events, we were able to adapt a lot quicker. During that 2-year period, we had upgraded our rifles that we had. We didn't have rifles prior to that. We had shotguns. And now all of a sudden we have this person with military training who outgunned us and had the ability to reach out further than we did with our shotguns. So we upgraded our weapons, and that's when we started to train for these type of events, but there was no training curriculum at that time for it. So we were winging it and going off of what some of us had learned in what's termed military operations in urban terrain and close quarters battle, and trying to adapt it to a civilian function as a law enforcement officer. So that was a significant event for us. And then in 1998, we had a civil disturbance in the Beaver Canyon area. And the reason why that's significant is because that forced us to train as a county, as a complete county, not just a tactical team or a tactical concept. So since 1998, we have trained every year, every police officer together on civil disturbance tactics. They're termed mobile field force. What we did was, within the riot that it's often referred to, I refer to it as civil disturbance, but the riot took place in July, and by September, we had written grants to get everybody helmets and gas masks and equipment that we didn't have. And we also had consultants come in from Miami Dade Police Department to share their tactics on mobile field force or riot training to help us out with our crowds and situations that we have. And the long and the short of it is we kind of adapted it from a big city concept into more of a small town, college town type of situation. We're not going to be out using water cannons and gassing everybody and beating people up with long sticks and so forth. But we do use some chemical agents, and we rely a lot on the compliance of the crowd and good tactics and just good judgment of people to be able to do things. What that has done is that we've then, shared our concept with other college towns and areas that don't want to have a lot of civil litigation by using blunt objects and water cannons and other things of that sort. Next up is after 9/11, Penn State said, hey, we need to do something with the stadium. We found that we are on a list here of interest, because we have so many people, such a dense area. If you think about it, you have over 100,000 fans in the stadium and another 50 to 75,000 outside the stadium. It's a target-rich environment. So that's when we created what we call the ground level integrated overwatch, which is simply an umbrella of snipers that are integrated with people on the ground. And then we have layers going outward of people that we try to be able to provide that information and observations to interdict with people. We have had some very interesting contacts with people over the years, but we've shared our concept with other areas and other large stadiums too. Another event we had that I hopefully will have enough time to wrap up here in a little bit was we also have specialties in tracking people. Tactical tracking and wooded terrain operations, because Pennsylvania is such a semi-rural area, and this area can be very rural once you get outside of State College, is that we have tracking abilities and navigation skills and so forth, and we have shared that with other police departments throughout the country. In 2008, we had a shooting with a guy who was shooting at police officers that happened to be tactical team officers. His intention was to go and be an active shooter at a Christian radio station, but along the way, he was struggling significantly with mental health issues. He forgot where he wanted to go, and he stopped at a car dealership, asked for directions, and told the person there what he was going to do. And that gave us time to get to the Christian radio station, and we were able to stop him from coming in. He was shooting at our officers, and he was fatally shot to stop the event. But I compare that as a 10-year comparison or 12-year comparison between what we experienced in '96 with the hub shooting, and then 2008 with somebody who's coming to kill people in another active shooter event. These next two incidents would not seem to be related, but in our eyes they are. In 2010, we experienced a Eastern European organized crime event where some folks of Russian descent were robbing banks and homes and convenience stores and cars, everything you can imagine, in central PA, generally east and near the Erie area. And they slowly made their way to State College. But the difference is that one of their drivers, they relied on people who were non-Russian speaking drivers, and they happened to pick a guy who was an informant for the state police. So we wired up their van, and when they came to town to commit these robberies, we ended up getting into a pretty cool incident, a couple of incidents with them. Didn't go as planned, but we were able to make the arrest with them. And their trial that took place in 2012 was scheduled on the same week, the same 2-week time period as the Jerry Sandusky trial. So we had to deploy all of our elements of our tactical team in Bellefonte at the courthouse. And the national media that had mobbed over the county at that time thought that we were there for Jerry Sandusky. But we were actually there because of this Eastern European crime syndicate. And one thing that I failed to mention in there is between their preliminary hearing for all the crimes that they had committed in robberies and so forth, and their trial, they had some folks in their organized crime element who were staking out the deputy sheriffs when they were transporting these these suspects to and from the jail to the courthouse. And another informant gave that information up. So we ended up foiling that. We then transported them back and forth in armored vehicles with a helicopter escort. and so forth. And that was all taking place and coming to fruition when the Jerry Sandusky trials were coming to town. So that made it very interesting too. And then the last thing that I could talk about in short is in 2019 in January, we had an active shooter incident at the Ramada Inn at a bar that spilled over into a secondary site in a retirement village. And all told, there were 4 people killed and 1 seriously wounded and 1 person rescued. That was a bad event. That was during the time period that one of my shoulders was replaced. So I was running around with the arm in a sling, no vest on, and my gun in my left pocket, just because, you know, that's the best I could do at the time. But very proud of our officers and what they did in that event. They ended up, they saved the life with the medics who were there of one of the young ladies who was a gunshot victim, and also saved an elderly lady whose husband was killed in front of her. The suspect killed himself when our officers kicked the door open. He took his own life, but that ended that event. So those are the 10 events that I kind of chose real quick. I hit on them as far as what their significance was, but there's a couple of neat little things that have come out of those 10 events. The first one being the wooded terrain and tactical tracking. Because we developed a navigation component, and I stole it from the military essentially, and a tracking component, that was adopted by the National Tactical Officers Association. And some of the people that we've trained over the years are people who search for, like Eric Rudolph, the guy who committed a bombing at the '96 Olympics in Atlanta and some abortion clinics. And he was eventually caught in North Carolina, but some of the officers from Tennessee area and North Carolina participated in the training that we were able to help out and train with. Not too long after that, a guy named Bucky Phillips killed some troopers in New York. And as a result of that, we got the opportunity to train officers in Broome County, as well as the Binghamton, New York area on tactical tracking and wooded terrain operations. And then also we got to train a lot of the troopers in Pennsylvania who participated in the Eric Frayne event about 6-7 years ago, where he shot some troopers up in Northeast PA. And it was very gratifying to work with those guys in that regard, because like I had mentioned before, they helped us get started. And now we got the opportunity to pay them back with gratitude for how they helped us out. But that all came out of that incident of wooded terrain and tactical tracking that happened in Clearfield with a murder suspect that we were able to locate through tracking him through the woods and the forest. I kind of hit on the organized crime event and how that was significant. And I'll wrap up with this, that in 1998, with the creation of tactics and so forth for active shooter events, in the fatality reviews, they said, hey, look, you can't wait for tactical teams to show up. Police officers have to intervene. And, it can be dangerous, but you got to do your job. And that resulted in a fair number of older officers retiring in the United States, because they just were like, I'm not in it for that. But a lot of younger men and women are like, I signed up for this. If that's what needs to be done, then I'll do it. Well, 3 main concepts came out of it. The first one is called a contact team. And if the shooting is still taking place, you're to go in and stop that event as best as you possibly can. The interesting thing is that most events are over within 15 seconds. So it's very unlikely that you're going to be the person who stops that active shooter, but it does happen. The second concept that comes out of it is called the search technique, whereas the person is not active. You have to search for them, either on site or out in the public, wherever they are. At one time, it was almost every time an active shooter would shoot people and then take their own life. And that has changed. Now active shooters go on the lam. I mean, we just had one in Nova Scotia where a guy went across the whole northern part of that province, killing almost 24 people, and using a police car and police uniform to surreptitiously go about this heinous act. But we use that search concept. And the last one is what's termed the rescue team concept. And what they found in the fatality reviews is that the police were spending so much time trying to find the bad person and stop them that we were letting people bleed out. So what came from that in Arlington, Virginia, was the concept of the rescue task force, that if you have people out searching for this active shooter, but you have victims in a warm zone area, an area that's relatively safe, that the police become armed escorts for medics who go in and provide this life-saving aid. And we took a pretty active role in that, to the point where we started our own curriculum in Central PA in our regional terrorism task force areas that goes all the way to Maryland, and from Harrisburg to Altoona, 8 counties. And we created our own curriculum, and that curriculum started as a spread. And then we participated in a pilot program for the National Tactical Officers Association on making that rescue task force an instructor program so that others can learn it and then go out and teach it. Well, now that is the newest concept that's spreading throughout North America. And what was neat, even though we did have the shooting at the Ramada Inn last year where 4 people were killed, the good thing that came out of it is that our training techniques and procedures that we put in place through this rescue task force and these other active shooter events is that that person, 2 people, were still alive when our officers got there. And they were able to go out and search for the guy, but there were officers there who provided that warm zone bubble for the medics to come in and transport 2 people immediately to the hospital, of which one of them survived, and she was recently married. And I'm really happy for her. We also, in that concept, is you don't wait sometimes for a tactical team show up to conduct a hostage rescue. And that's what our officers did in combination with other officers from other departments. They proceeded right to where this guy was. He drove about a mile away and shot his way into a couple who were in their 80s and into their home. And he ended up killing the husband, and we were able to intervene before he could kill the wife. The neat thing is this past January 24th, the 1 year anniversary, their son, who was a retired detective from Northern Virginia, he had a corn and seafood broil for us, and we were able to meet her again, the older lady, and just be grateful, and blessed for life. So that's all I really have. If you have any specific questions or any questions in general, I'd be glad to answer them, or at least attempt to answer them.
Well, thank you. And I can give you one more piece of information. I know the Vermont incident was a terribly tragic incident, but I can give you one more piece of information. My oldest daughter, is good friends with Nicole, the young woman who survived. And so I texted her while you were talking. And she said that not only is she married, but she's expecting a baby now. So she's doing very well. So, I know those incidents are tough on you, and you always want to hear the any good thing, any good news that can come from it. So you not only saved her life, but you may have provided a lasting legacy, another generation, and hopefully more beyond that. So
that's great. Yeah, it's great to hear.
Please, anyone who's attending, please ask. And already the questions are coming in. I have a couple prepared, if nobody, but they're already coming in. So you can also see them when you, if you call up Q&A down at the bottom of your screen, but I'll read them to you. There's just one question so far. It says, thank you for speaking at this event. This message is, he's just saying that he sent his message accidentally in 2 parts, but is being in SWAT harder for your family than, I'm guessing, is it harder for your family or for you to be in, because you're called out at all kinds of times and all kinds of incidents?
I think that it's harder on the family because when you're on a tactical team, you train a lot with each other, and you know what to expect. That people have your back. You have expectations, and you get to sort through things and work it out. But it's the family. Your family has to really, I guess, love you a lot to be able to put up with the middle of the night type of things, or during your vacation, or they're never at a good time. Some things like special events are easy to plan for, but I definitely give kudos out to the family members who put up with all the things that happen. I think it's tougher on them.
Okay. Another question, do you think your military experience made the job easier? And I guess we could add on to that. If someone else wanted to follow your career path, what would you recommend?
As far as following a career path. The majority of the members on our tactical team were not in the military. So they just happen to have an interest. They're willing to work hard at it, to include, education and being cerebral, as well as, the physical part of it too. So I'm the guy who, when I was in the military, I volunteered for everything, even though my dad told me not to. But I got to go on a lot of deployments and participate in a lot of things in the military that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do had I not volunteered. I would suggest that whatever your career passions are, pursue it vigorously, and appreciate that process, because it's the process along the way that you build relationships and bridges that really are fulfilling. How did the military help out? I'm blessed with the ability to shoot well, and I've won several sniper competitions, especially in my 30s. Not anymore. I wear reading glasses now, but I just was blessed with abilities, and I had opportunities to learn. One of the most important things was how to conduct a site assessment. So where that comes into importance is that the ability to view something, be able to create a solution for it, and then act on it. And I had a lot of those skills learned over the years from my military experience.
Okay, great. We have a question. Can you speak more about your experience at the FBI Academy?
Sure. That was probably one of the best things I ever had the opportunity to participate in my entire life. The FBI National Academy is a 10-week course that takes place on Quantico. You're there with the FBI agents and analysts as they go through their training. The difference is they're starting from scratch. Those of us who attended the National Academy of the FBI, we already have our firearms training, our police academies, and other types of formal trainings where the analysts and the agents are going through their basic training. It's very intense for them. They have to make it through this course. I made it a point every day to talk to an analyst or a new agent to find out their background. And I was just so impressed with the things that they but the things that they were willing to leave behind to become an FBI agent. Anything from, CPAs, doctors, attorneys, gymnasts, everything you can imagine, professional football players. They let it behind because their dream, they were following their dreams, chasing their dreams, was to be an FBI agent. It really inspired me, to have these young people, which I speak to college students around here too. I'd like to hear what people want to do. I'm getting older and I don't have as many goals and objectives, so I get inspired by young people. But it was fun. It was 10 weeks of graduate level courses taught by FBI agents who are behavioral analysts, doctors in the FBI, and it was accredited through the University of Virginia. So I got grad school credits for it, and it was just a quick story. One of the behavioral analysts, who was my professor, is the guy who created Hannibal Lecter for the Silence of the Lambs, and he took 4 serial killers and he created Hannibal Lecter from that person. And then one of the evenings in our breakout sessions, we watched Silence of the Lambs, and Dr. Conlon described how he came up in his mind with these serial killers and made them help make the movie. It was really cool. Great event. I would recommend it for anybody who gets into the law enforcement profession and applies. You have to be able, it takes about 2 to 3 years to make it through on the list. You have to have a clearance to be able to hear the information and be part of it, and in the decision-making model, and then to be accepted into it. And then there are fitness standards you have to pass to graduate. It's a good time.
Thank you. We actually have a 2-part question, but you kind of answered the second part a little bit when you talked about the FBI Academy, but I'll still ask it. Question is, how did your Penn State education help you? And do you think that any major is good training for a career like yours in policing and especially tactical teams?
Sure. My Penn State degree, along with my military experience, has opened so many doors for me. When I first graduated from college, I went to California, and you would think when you travel 3,000 miles across the country that you would be isolated or on your own. but I got hooked up with the San Diego Penn State chapter and made a lot of friends. Ended up, when I joined the Marines, I ended up in Camp Pendleton in Southern California. So those friends have been mine for my entire life. Over the years, when even to apply and be accepted into the FBI National Academy, having my degree from Penn State on my resume was one of the contributing factors that got me accepted. So it's more than a piece of paper. It's a big deal to me. I was the first one in my family tree to get a bachelor's degree, so it was important to me. As far as what is an important major for like a law enforcement or an FBI type of career, I can tell you that most of our I should say most, but at least half of our officers do not have law enforcement related degrees. We have engineers, we have math degrees, we have all kinds of different degrees. People just, we change our minds, The important thing is, being successful in obtaining our degree and our education, and then applying it how we see fit that would make us happy, because if we have to do it for a lifetime, it better be important to us.
And I can attest that Penn Staters are everywhere. You're never alone. I have my study abroad class. When I go to Amsterdam, and I was sitting at the Amsterdam airport waiting for my students to arrive on the various flights, all sitting all day, and this woman walked up to me, and I was a little concerned because there are some unique people in Amsterdam, and she walked real, up to me in a kind of a strange way, and got really close to me and whispered, because I was wearing a Penn State shirt so that my students would know who I was, and she walked up to me and she just said, "We are." And so I'm like, okay, I thought that you might be a killer or something else, but you're just from Penn State. And so I understand it completely.
I had that happen to me in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yeah, no, let's see, they're everywhere.
We are. I was like, Penn State. Yeah.
One other quick story. I had friends from the Anne Frank house visit Penn State, and I'd given them a Penn State each of them a Penn State sweatshirt. And so they go all over the world doing things. And they were in, the one was walking through an airport, I think in Seattle, and someone hollered out, "We are." And he wasn't quite used to that because he wasn't Penn State. So he hollered back, "Happy?" so I've trained him ever since. But please, if there are more questions, ask. But in the meantime, I have a quick one. You've certainly told us a lot about how diverse these tactical teams are. They're not like, as you said at the beginning of your talk, like you see in the media, where it's only maybe the team that is inserting themselves in, knocking down the doors, or maybe the snipers, but really diverse team. It really is a team. But I would imagine, even though the media always focuses on the action part, that a lot of your job is preparation and training. And so I'm just thinking specifically about Penn State and local schools. How much of your work is going out and trying to prevent these incidents from happening? Sitting down with even local high schools, elementary school officials, and going over their security.
Well, the example of school, for an example, is most schools have a school resource officer. So we try to not only train in schools in the summertime, so we're familiar with the area, but also to kind of enhance the skills of the school resource officers and kind of instill in whatever jurisdiction we're dealing with their patrol officers and detectives to take ownership of the schools, know as much as they can, and then work with the school officials. We have a great relationship with the State College High, and because we cover a pretty decent area of the Center region and Center County, that also brings into account other school districts. So it really gives us an opportunity to have a special partnership and to work with them and to kind of introduce them to what we do and some of the things that are important. An example is in a school, you have several layers of walls. So it's important to, take like a bomb robot there so the school officials can see what it's like in the event that they ever have some kind of suspicious device, and how important those shielding of walls are to evacuating people and what the bomb robot can do or something along those lines. So yeah, that's important. Preparation's important. We follow the national standard that you have 2 training days a month based on your training, based on your tactics and techniques and procedures. But for us, what that means is that there's a certain amount of training that goes into like the entry team work and sniper work and negotiations and so forth. But we put a lot of time into preparation. where we go out and we study sites that might be affected. We put a lot of time into crisis intervention team and the ability to recognize things and also to come up with concepts that fit our area. There are plenty of firms out there that will try to give you a technique on how to do something, but you really have to adapt it for your area. So we spend a lot of time doing that in our preparation. Give an example, this COVID-19 situation, right off the bat created a 27-page operations plan I had to write up on how we would conduct our business just if we became sick, and how we would participate, what type of protective equipment we would have to wear during some of our trainings or our events. And we shared some of our concepts, like, during this event, even though I hate to see people being laid off or, being cooped up at home, what it does is it provides us a lot of opportunities to train on ranges or to use high-rise buildings and buildings that aren't occupied for opportunities for training that we typically would not have. So.
Thank you. I mean, I hadn't considered that part, the last part that you were talking about. Obviously, your job is different during the current crisis, but the opportunities to actually carry out some of that training has got to be helpful for you, and to just hone your skills and trying to anticipate what may come up. The other question I had, and again, I encourage the attendees, if you have any questions, please ask, would be, obviously in a lot of these incidents, you're dealing with somebody who has some mental health issues. Do you have good training in recognizing certain symptoms, and how to respond to certain symptoms, or how to respond to certain behaviors? And it may not be the entire team, but maybe the negotiation team, or maybe even throughout the entire police department. Because I know Chief King came to talk to my class one time and talked about the network that he had helped to create, the task force with various agencies around the country, or around the borough, to deal with mental health issues.
Sure. One of the efforts that we really rely on is the crisis intervention team concept. It's a week-long course where we have professionals come in, some of them from Penn State, giving us information, and we role play. We actually have role play skits that we have to work through so that we can use them on our own when we're out with dealing with somebody who may be struggling in the public. No family is not impacted by some mental health challenges or issues with addiction and all kinds of different types of situations. So it's fairly prominent, and it's we really want to try to erase that stigma so that people can get help as a society and as a country. But what it's also done for us is this crisis intervention team concept is made all of us really take a hard look at, can I be a negotiator, and how can I provide services to somebody? How can I take that one extra step to help somebody? Sometimes the crisis is bad enough that you just don't have the opportunity to negotiate, whether they attack you or whether they're trying to do harm or even to themselves. We've seen an uptick in that happening recently under the COVID situation. Not necessarily with the police, but with people who are really struggling. But it's really helped us, because what we've done is it's really caused us to slow things down as much as we possibly can, rather than trying to force action, which may have happened like 20 years ago. It's the real benefit of it, I think, has been how we've been able to unite a lot of services through the county and the state to be able to help people, maybe not so much at that crisis moment, but if we're able to be successful in resolving it, to do the follow-up with them. I know Penn State has a very good unit that is able to intervene sometimes and get people help. Our counties and our state agencies are able to help us out quite a bit. And my distant family, I've learned some things in the crisis intervention team training that I've used with my extended families to help them get services too. So that's been very helpful for us.
Okay. Well, they're being kind of quiet tonight. It's the last week of the semester. And so,
good luck with mine. Yeah.
But I'm sure, because everyone stayed the entire time pretty much. And, you know, I could listen to you for another couple hours. So we'll have to get together at some point. And, you know, I definitely want to try and arrange when everything kind of returns to normal to have you come on campus, show some of the equipment, and talk even more, because I think you've given us a much more refined and sophisticated look at tactical teams than what's presented in popular TV shows and media, die-hard movies like that are, you know, will leave you scratching your head if you know anything about these teams. But, you know, it's a fascinating look at an important part of policing. And you did a fantastic job tonight, Chris. So I thank you. I thank everyone who came and attended this talk tonight. And if you have any follow-up questions, if you're a little bit shy, please send them to me and I'll make sure that they get to Captain Fishel, and I know he'll answer them. So everybody out there, be safe. The semester's almost done. So this is one of the strangest semesters. It's got to be maybe the strangest semester, and let's hope it's the last one like this, that we return to normal soon. And Chris, if you have any last words for tonight.
Best wishes. Good luck with your finals. You know, chase your dreams and do well. I'm rooting for you. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.